G'day, I'm Peter Bender and you've joined me on my Bundaberg Commercial YouTube channel where I help people to buy and sell commercial properties and businesses. One of the best ways of learning is having a look at an actual complex case study, and that's what we're going to do today. We had a sale recently completed which was 3 days short from 3 years. That means that we listed it 3 years ago and we sold it pretty well this month. And it was complex, and we're going to go through this in detail, including the numbers, all the warts and all sort of type stuff, the highs and lows, the dragons, the damsels, so you can pick up a feel and learn about all sorts of stuff to do with commercial property and businesses. Firstly, this property is a conglomerate, is the easiest way to explain it. It's essentially a hardware store, but a large one at that. But 80% of the business comes from the retail hardware store, but it also has a section in the back where they manufacture and fabricate trusses and frames for buildings, wooden ones. They have a steel fabrication workshop where they build sheds and provide material for kit homes, the likes of that sort of material. They also have landscaping supplies. They also have a skip business. They also have a small engine business, a pool shop. So there's a lot of it. And this is quite normal in regional areas because you don't have the luxury of having all these players. And this business has been around a long time. Think 30 years. So over the 30 years, they've just picked up bits and pieces and continued on in growing the business and helping their community. They're a tremendous asset to their community. An area where if you didn't have something at that local hardware store, it's a good hour to 2 hours to drive to another town to pick up the material. All right, let's have a look at the numbers. So all up, the business and the commercial property was worth 4.4 million. Now that's a big bopper price in a regional area. That puts them right up there in probably the top 10% of businesses in that region. How do we work out the price? All right, so a lot of it was the large land holdings and the 7 industrial sheds, including offices that they have in the property. And we were fortunate enough that the owner had recently gotten a valuation from a valuer. Now, the good thing about having that is the same methodology that we use by a bank. And that's important because when you're talking at multi-million dollar properties, quite often you're going to find it's needing finance. And banks are going to want valuations. So we were able to cut out a lot of the negotiation and arguments with the banks because they're using the same people that we did to value the property. We added a little bit more because valuers are generally conservative. The bank wants to know if the world collapses and I need to sell the property tomorrow, how much will I get for it? So it's not really a market price that they're looking for. It's more a quick fire sale price. And also the valuation was about 8 months old, and that area that the property was in has had quite a strong property growth. So we factored that little section in. All right, stock evaluation, that proved to be a bit of a challenge. The owners were very much old school. They didn't even really have a stock system. He was one of those guys who just knew every nut and every bolt and every piece of wood in his property. He knew how much was there, when it was brought in, who was going to, all that type of material. And he had a rough idea of the valuation of stock, which is about $1.2 million. At the end of the day, we did a fairly solid stock take at the settlement date, and it wasn't too far off. So that includes the stock on it. Now, one of the interesting things is how do we actually value the business component? So the business component had a lot of machinery. Like I said, there's manufacturing plants, there's forklifts, there's trucks. He also does a delivery service. So you've got some decent delivery size vehicles on there, but they're all pretty aged. And there's one line of thought that says, "Oh, Peter, that equipment's old. It's not worth anything." Now, the problem with that is, how do I accept that there's no value in that equipment, particularly from an accountant's point of view, because it's all been depreciated, when that business is turning over $500,000 in net profit every year? If that equipment wasn't worth anything, then that business would not be making any money. There's a flaw in the logic to people who like to use a methodology of valuing equipment by depreciation or age. Now, there's two other things you can do. You can have a look at what replacement cost is. So essentially, what would you pay for that 10-year-old truck that's done 150,000 kilometres on it and has an engine rebuild on it? That gives you an arm's length agreement. You can have a look at that as an aspect. You can have a look at, okay, well, if you was to build the business from scratch, how much would it cost you to get equipment in there? In the end, the owner was comfortable with, I think, about $500,000. We just decided to look at that as the value of the machinery and assets that he had, and we took that as part of the package. And the final component of doing evaluation of a freehold business, so this is a business that has property, was to have a look at what they call goodwill, or what is the net profit and what multiple do you use? When you value a business, there's a component of it which is a multiple of the net profit, annual net profit. Now, where the difficulty of this comes in is some businesses will have a high multiple. Like I've seen probably a multiple of 8. So if you made $100,000 a year, then they'd add the value of that as being $800,000. So a new buyer would pick up a break-even point in 8 years. In other industries, and I think garden services is the worst, and also cabinet making, you're looking about 3 to 6 months goodwill. So if you made $100,000, they're only going to pay you $30,000 or $60,000, depending on what sort of factor you got. So you've got anywhere between a short term and a long term, and that changes. It changes by region, it changes by the state of the economy, and it changes by industry. Now, the industry that we were talking about in retail hardware was fairly flat, so we used a multiple of 1.25, and that, along with the replacement cost of the assets, the stock at valuation, and the valuation of the commercial property, gave us close to a $4.4 million listing price. So that's the numbers side on it. Now, we had a lot of adventures with this from a people point of view, and we'll discuss that. Quite often people will do due diligence and they'll look at the numbers, and sometimes I've seen people put offers in on businesses and properties without even inspecting the place, which is not a big support from my point of view, but it's how some people like to work, and it all depends on where they are. So when you're looking at buying a business, we like to say you've got to have a look at it. So there were people that we had do some inspections. We didn't do a lot of inspections because at this price point, there's not a lot of people who can afford it or who are looking for this type of business. This is a large operation. It was really on the size that it was no longer suitable for a family. It really was very close to borderline being a corporate ownership. The new owner who actually bought it is moving up for a lifestyle change and is very savvy and is going to do a lot of updates in regards to processes and a lot more computerization. And he will have a strong support manager in there. So essentially there'll be like 2 people at least as a minimum to run the business, where the previous owner and his wife had run the business. We had several offers and several different packages. When you get to this type size business, it's lovely if you get someone who drives up with the back of the truck with $4.4 million worth of cash, but generally it doesn't. And there was several complex deals. We had one that was from a client who had his money tied up in developments, and he was happy to pay the full price, but he needed to have the time to sell the developments, which is a challenge because developments can take a fair whack of time. One of the things that you need to appreciate, if you are going to look at a creative or entrepreneurial deal as part of your offer, you generally don't have a lot of negotiation on price. If you have cash and it's a simple deal, that's probably when you have leverage in regards to being able to negotiate on price. So all the offers that we had, and we had 3 main players, The three main players all wanted to do something a little bit creatively, and which meant that they were going to need to pay full price. So all the offers we had was at full price. And as a commercial real estate agent, I don't do discounts. You need to have a very solid reason to provide a discount. When I do pricing with clients, we have a very defendable position. And if we get someone who's like a tire kicker, who's just looking around, I love the people who ring up straight away and say, oh, how much is it? 4.4 million. It's not worth it. Oh, but it makes $10 million net profit. What, really? I said, no, it doesn't, but you obviously have no idea what the business is doing, so what makes you think it's not worth it? Realistically, those sort of comments are more on the fact that people are not comfortable, what I say, in working with the land with a lot of zeros. And when you got $4.4 million, there's a lot of zeros at the end of that. So that the first serious contender who came up and had a look was really needing to have a long time to settle and organise payment from selling his developments. In the end, the owners decided that they didn't want to go with that way. So we had another gentleman who came up and had a look, and we put together a package, but he was very uncomfortable with the price, particularly the fact that the equipment was old and the processes are pretty well almost archaic. But once again, people need to recognise that if you don't run the business the way that you want to, it doesn't mean that it's not a good business. Now, this business has been there a long time. It's generating strong revenue. It's increasing in the revenue. It's got a lot of ticks in a lot of boxes to work with. So we spent almost a year negotiating with this particular buyer. And he came and he went, and he came and he went, and we did a lot of work on there. We put together a package for him, and then things got difficult from financing. One of the challenges you have in finance is banks don't like to do a lot of lending on the business side of a freehold business. They're happy to lend against secured assets, such as commercial property. But when you're looking at things like stock and old machinery in particular and cash flow, because they can't sell that quickly, it's difficult to get finance. So this client needed three loans essentially to get it organised, including vendor financing. But we got the package together, and we got a good price, and we got a good handover, and the sale went through, which is fabulous. There's a lot of work in the due diligence. We had, it was months going through the solicitors. Solicitors have a role in life of protecting their clients. Now, most solicitors in the commercial space understand that the importance is to make the contract work, but it's also important that it works for all parties. And a lot of the negotiation was in regards to, what can we do? How can we help the buyer? How can we help the seller? What do we do in regards to settlement terms? What do we do in regards to handover? Because it was a complex business that's been, growing for decades. So we needed to have a handover period. The owner was going to stay on as a consultant for a fair period of time to get that up and running. And it was like I said, 3 days short of 3 years when we finally settled on that property. So that gives you a bit of detail on how we valued the asset. The marketing itself, we did a lot of work on the national websites. We did a lot of work through social media. We did a lot of work on just contacting prospective buyers, people who are in similar businesses who might be looking to expand. We targeted local people. We targeted interstate people. We targeted people across a range of industries who might be interested. And in the end, like 80% of my sales, it came from an inquiry on the web. Just from, I think, commercialrealestate.com was the site that we had in this particular instance. I have to admit that's my favourite one. Real Commercial is another popular one, but I mean, really, guys, let's be honest here. You're 3 times as expensive, and I get a third of your inquiries. So I'm not a big fan of that one. I'll say that here and now. If this goes viral, then everybody will know that. So yeah, realcommercial.com is a challenge to work with, because it's 3 times as expensive as its competitor. And to be honest, after measuring, I only get about 1/3 of the inquiries. So my favourite is commercialrealestate.com. They sound similar, but they're very different in results. Anything else that we can think of? I think it's a really good result. One of the challenges that I find to make contracts stick is you need to make sure your buyer and seller are both motivated. So that means that it needs to be a good fit. It was a good fit for the buyer because he's at the stage in his career where he's ready to take on a new, bigger project, but he also wanted to be able to have a life. So moving his family up to a regional area is a tremendous bonus for him. And it was a good deal for the seller because he knows that the new buyer is going to take care of the business. He wants to be able to still drive around next year and see, the business thumping. He wants to make sure that his community continues to be supported by the business, and most importantly, wants to make sure his staff are taken care of. He's very much a gentleman who wants to make sure that the important people are taken care of. And I think it'll be a good result. And if you want to know more, there's going to be another video that I'll put out, which will be on the sale of a laundromat. So make sure you smash that subscribe button and hit the alert, because there's quite a tail associated with the laundromat, which gives you a different size and different industry to work with. And there's all sorts of mechanisms and, once again, unexpected twists and turns to run with. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment, hit a like button, all the stuff that is normal. And until next time, take care and God bless.